In the darkness, the moon above the VR facility looked like an extraterrestrial voyeur. The chain link fence slid back, and the police cruiser, its lights dimmed, quietly rolled through. Gong parked the car by the garbage trucks and cleaning bots at the rear, just as Harris's avatar appeared on their feed, his messy, greasy hair bouncing up and down.
Hey guys, which came first, the chicken or the egghead?
Harris asked.
Whichever one I code.
You're a fucking genius, Harris, Gong said. How about the feeds in that den? This place is tight, yeah? No trace of our IDs.
I, poor patron, am the keeper to the keys of this here castle,
Harris said.
We got a few hours, coppers. The captain told me to give you boys an extra big pack lunch and send you down for the final round, and believe me, I want all the tasty data I can munch on. You two thus far have been a bean feast.
Let's get on with it, Lee said quietly.
Very well, patrons,
Harris said.
I shall lower the drawbridge over this electronic moat.
As soon as Lee and Gong stepped out the cruiser, it began to self-drive back to the precinct, Gong making sure it wiped any trace of their route. The entranceway door slid up. Gong and Lee walked quietly through to the diving room, stepping carefully over the mass of wires, machinery and half-broken androids strewn between the faint and glimmering projections. I hope you are feeling peckish, gentlemen. The voice of Jeeves rang out in the empty facility. We have a particularly delightful menu arrangement for you this eve. The butler android brought out a tray with 2 cups of water and shining pills.
4 servings each of the strongest chronosine yet devised, coppers,
Harris said.
The last of our prototype supply. Napkins on, tuck in.
Before he could overthink it, the strangeness of their surroundings and the intensity of the situation surreal enough without the aid of chemicals. Lee took his pills one by one, swallowing each with a sense of slight, impending doom.
No need for the long face,
Harris said.
You're about to bend and stretch that mind of yours in ways you would never have imagined possible.
Can't wait, Lee said slowly, feeling exhausted. He stepped back into the pod like a prisoner being condemned. You really think we're going to pull this off? He asked Gong, leaning back in the pod beside him, switching to his feed. Think there's about as much chance we're going to dive right into one of the Glade cells and be the evening's entertainment for the richest people on Earth.
A human sacrifice, eh?
Harris said, synchronizing with them.
They could put you in a pot of oil, dance around you singing voodoo mantras. No, have no fear. All the worlds are joining stages, and I have seen beyond this veil of tears. What awaits you is simply the next entr'acte.
Harris, I really don't know how you get by in the real world. Here we go, Lee said and exhaled deeply. Harris brought up glowing lines of green code in the darkness, his eyes expanding beyond the giant frames of his glasses as he did so, spittle building at the corner of his mouth as he pored over the data. The cold, now familiar clasp of the pod's compression gel felt even stranger in the colder margins of the night. Lee closed his eyes. Already he felt like the chronosine was exploding in his mind, rupturing reality in a firework display, though surely that was impossibly soon. He saw Harris step forward and take the clasp and begin to zip him in, then stop, then walk backwards, then go to zip him in him zip to go, then backwards walk, then stop, then in him zip to begin, and clasp to take and forward step Harris saw he. He saw Harris step forward and take the clasp and begin to zip him in, then stop, then walk backwards, then go to zip him in. Falling was he.
The snake of time was eating its own tail.
Falling was he.
It was dark, darkening, darker, darkest.
Rusty feathers in the neon light, strumming chord choppers, midnight claws, growing loud, breaking silence tight, stage on fire, burning through my floss, barnyard blitz breaking from the pen, wings spread wide. Out there for you. This going up. So, I move me around. get jakten als ik er van hoor. Och, jag nipte var stort ni max. Alla innan är så där pizza.
He was in a lighthouse. Then he was at the very top. He put his hands to the giant bulb before him. It span and span and span. He felt smashing down below. He lunged outwards through the window and raced down and down, even and there was the sea with a million flames like ice and blue fire. This was it. And he was smashing into the water. This was his manifestation of the manifold. He could hear the waves pounding against the crumbling cliff. How could he get out? There was the water below. He felt the outside air on his face. Searching for a way down. The lighthouse was facing out to sea, everything else was in darkness. When the bulb of the lighthouse was facing out to sea, everything else was in darkness. Searching for an opening. He could hear the waves pounding against the crumbling cliff. This was his manifestation of the manifold ways to dive. This was it. This was it. He lunged outwards, even if it meant down to die, over the railing, and raced down and down, and there was the sea with a million flames like ice and blue fire. And span. He was smashing into the water before him, smashing down below. He was in a lighthouse, and there was another man. A dark man, a man with angel wings on the other side of the bulb, and it swept between them and lit them up, once in darkness, once in light, again and again and again. And with each frame of the rotating light, white and cutting, the man seemed to come closer to him. But was he a man at all? For he looked darker and made of something else. The man stepped closer to him in scattered frames as the sensation to dive, to get to the water, overcame him. Lee turned in fear from this monstrosity and began to look down to the ocean, knowing that was his only escape.
How does limbo feel to you? Unwashed sinner, not yet paid of dues.
The man asked him. Lee tried to speak, but he couldn't. He had a feeling that he was trapped in a cage made of the universe. There was no way out.
To pass out of limbo, let the forfeit be an equal pound of your fair flesh, cut off and taken in what part of your body pleaseth me, be that body or mind.
Lee felt himself being dragged forward, stretched as if he were made of living plastic. His head was pulled. Darkness rimmed his vision. The angel pried open his skull and with long fingers clawed open his head, dug his claws into his brain and took out a piece of it.
He opened his eyes, but it was hard fought to see through them. He was breathing. He smelled dust, and he remembered everything. Congratulations, Mr. Lee. We have been eagerly awaiting your return. The Cruise Royale will be lifting off soon. They are expecting your presence.
Harris had got them in. Somehow, he had got them back in. Lee stood upright and felt his head where the vision of Han Shu had taken a chunk of his brain. His head felt fine. There was nothing there, no trace in VR at least, but Han knew they were here. He must have known they were coming, but Harris had outdone him and slipped them, once more, down into the electric glade. "Where's Illinois Slim?" Lee asked the host, and walked over to the typewriter and drawer to see if there was a message.
"It's waiting for you downstairs, sir. We already have a rocket scheduled and waiting. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that your performance in the search and rescue event was trending for hours."
"Yeah, that's great," Lee said huskily. He went into the dingy bathroom and pulled the cord to turn on the light, checking his head all the way around, just to make sure there were no marks or scarring. "Lead the way," he said to the bowing construct, and followed him out into the corridor, almost immune, or at least expecting the freak show that awaited him there. They took the elevator, across the grand lobby that stretched unnaturally beyond any geometric constraint, and passed out through the revolving doors into a warm and comfortable night. The vehicle waiting for him was no quaint antique. It was something he had never seen before, something from the future or a dream. The rear door swung upwards. The front compartment was like a jet engine, but the rear passenger section was spacious, with leather seats and a carpeted floor. Gong was waiting inside, a cigar in his mouth.
"How you doing?"
Gong asked as Lee slid into the back. "I'm ready," Lee said.
"Good."
The door closed, and with a shock of propulsion they escalated, leaving the ground in a blur of loose form and color. The view beyond the aircraft slipped and stretched, trails of blurred light dripping like dew. Gong took a bottle of champagne from the door compartment and opened it. Lee felt his stomach lurch as they picked up speed. Why don't they just teleport us there? He asked. They could do anything. Where's the fun in that? Gong said, as they suddenly leveled out with a sound like a gunshot and floated towards a spaceship the size of a city. Lee was silenced by the galactic theater. The ship was a mass of intricate steel and a huge bow that jutted out in escalating layers of illuminated glass-sealed decks. This is it, Gong said quietly, looking down at the nose of the ship as they floated closer. This is where the admin's gonna be. We're here. The Cruise Royale, eh? They streamed into a line of hovering traffic and passed through a chrome-colored tunnel, arriving at a sleek, shining port. A gathering press with cameras and drones was stood behind a cordon, calling out their names. It's a shallow and superficial fantasy, but Lee tried to imagine how it felt to the people who had longed for this in perpetuity. It was the most obvious dream of fame. Was this the pinnacle? Was this the peak? Was this where their new aristocracy had longed so dearly to arrive? As they stepped onto the red carpet, they were swept away and escorted by hosts into the grand lobby. It was many floors of curling staircases sweeping around a piano and a harp. A beautiful woman was playing the harp, the music so serene as to be almost unnoticed, but it added a blanket of calm expectation to the scene. Curling around the rim of the floor above were several restaurants and bars. Guests were walking in and mixing with each other and the hosts. Lee saw every kind of imagined hero and villain dredged up from the fantasies enacted in the Glade. Gong seemed transfixed by the beautiful woman playing the harp. She looked back at him and smiled an uncanny smile. Come on, Lee said, and led them through the mixing guests, deeper into the ship. He noticed that no one looked older than about 35. There was no one younger than 20 either. It was another unnatural flaw of the Glade, another attempt at trying to hold the meridian of human existence at the expense of the inevitable and necessary flow of time. Time was at the center of this. It had been since the start. Lee went to bring up his feet in his contacts and scroll back that vision of Han in the lighthouse, but of course, he had no contacts, for he was not really here. This was their last chance. They had to find and trace Hanshu, and the bastard knew they were coming. Gong took a seat at the bar. Lee joined him, looking over his shoulder at the gathering below for any sign of angel wings. But if there were any administrators among them, and he was sure that there were, they were blending in the charade, just like everybody else. A host came up to the bar. What can I get for you, gentlemen? 2 whiskeys, Gong said. Everything included, right? Everything you can see here, sir. Yeah, give us 2 large glasses of the best you got, Gong said and breathed out a bout of smoke. And leave the bottle. Yes, sir, the host said and brought the bottle down and placed it on the counter. Another full bottle miraculously appeared on the shelf where it had been. How drunk have you been? Here, I mean, Lee asked. So drunk I almost couldn't get it up the last time we dived, Gong said. But I did my duty. You can mess with the body quite a lot. Not completely, but you can get hungry or thirsty if you want, like, to enjoy stuff more. I told you. And if you really want to piss or whatever, you can summon it, but if you don't think about it, you don't have to. You think they coded it that way, or you think they're still trying to figure out what people want? Fuck, I don't know. Must get inflated, Lee said quietly, looking around, searching for flaws in the dreamscape. The guests, must get used to it and want more, right? The admin needs constant ways to make it all seem scarce and exclusive again. That's what makes this place work. That's why they forced us to travel, go to physical places. We go to a bar to get a drink. We don't just summon it into our hands. They knew if it was that easy that this would descend into every other failed, chaotic domain. They're controlling the inflation of reality. You reckon, yeah? Maybe. I don't know. I think they just want to make this a great time, and fuck it is, right? Keep your head in the game, eh? Keep your eyes out, but seem relaxed. We don't need no philosophy now, right? Lee sighed and looked at the glamorous, ostentatious parade of people trailing under chandeliers to their rooms. He caught sight of this celestial view in one of the windows beyond the bar. A giant planet was starting to appear amidst the stars. The marble surface twirled with a terrible storm. The lights suddenly dimmed. Everyone at the bar and in the lobby below fell into quiet expectation. Ladies and gentlemen, boomed an omnipresent voice. All guests for the Cruise Royale are now on board. The captain's voice was stern and powerful, older than anyone else Lee had heard in the Glade. Welcome to everyone joining us for the first time. All newcomers, I promise you, this is going to be a grand finale, a cruise to remember. Everyone cheered. You have plenty of time now to return to your staterooms and choose your dress. Feel free to enjoy our indulgences on board before we land for the grand finale. I look forward to seeing you all about the ship. With a palpable air of excitement and gushing voices, everybody began departing. We have staterooms, Gong said. Why don't they tell us? A host suddenly appeared next to them. I will escort you now there, gentlemen. I've already drawn your bath.